I mean, I think if I could kind of condense it a little bit, I would say that media is always changing. The way people consume information is always changing. So, one of the things we're also looking at, I haven't mentioned, is how to use social media as a platform for information, not just linking to our articles, because we know that people stay on the platforms. They often don't leave the platforms, or they want something short. Reels, a short reel with explanation can be a way to reach the audience. So, understanding that the trends are constantly changing, and sometimes these trends are changing because there are powerful interests behind it. So tech companies have a say in how media landscape looks like, and we have to understand what their interests are and maybe try to think ahead and try to get ahead of it so that we can not fall behind and keep our portals and our information as sources for people.
Hello and welcome to Fix It, the podcast by the Fix Media, where we unpack media insights and take you behind the scenes of editorial decisions, strategy, and innovation. I'm your host Anton Protsiuk, senior editor of the Fix Media. Before we dive in, please subscribe, follow, and if you like what you hear, support us at thefix.media. Today, I'm happy to welcome Adam Reichardt, who is the editor-in-chief of New Eastern Europe, which is a political news magazine that's based in Krakow. We will speak about New Eastern Europe's 15-year journey as a niche magazine, and we will focus especially on their multi-product strategy, which involves juggling the print magazine and multiple digital products. And as a note, this interview is part of a series produced by The Fix under the MOST project. MOST is Media Organizations for Stronger Transnational Journalism. It's a European Commission initiative that connects 6 non-profit digital media outlets across Europe, and The Fix is happy to work as a mentor and consultant on product audience and business development for partner newsrooms. With that said, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, can you give us an overview of New Eastern Europe? What's your editorial focus and who is your target audience?
Sure. Well, New Eastern Europe, it's, first of all, I should say that we've been around now for 15 years. So we launched in 2011, a completely different world at that time when we launched. But generally, the aim has always been the same. It's to cover the situation in the region of Central and Eastern Europe as broadly as we understand it. So really all of the countries that were behind the Iron Curtain or under Soviet influence in some way. So we cover Baltic states, we cover Central Europe, we cover the Western Balkans, we cover Eastern Partnership countries, we cover Russia, Central Asia. So really a wide range of geographic, but also issues. So we cover social, economic, political, of course, geopolitical, security, all different types of issues that face this region. And really our aim is to kind of give a voice of the region to a wider global audience. So we really try to identify the stories and the contributors, things that are happening here in this region that really should be understood by the outside audience. And at the same time, I think we also want to show that what's happening in this region is just important from the aspects of global developments. So it's really important. And I think, seeing these last several years, but even before that, we know that this region is very important. And that's where New Eastern Europe tries to come in. So really our mission is to basically just kind of facilitate this dialogue between different communities and help understand what's happening here in the region of Central and Eastern Europe.
And have you seen an uptick of global attention in the past 4 years? A sense that your mission is even more important now?
Yes, absolutely. I think we gained a lot of new audience during the last 4 years, of course, because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But I do want to just highlight, and this is what we try to highlight to our readers and our audience, is that we've been here for much longer. And have been telling these stories and showing these processes from different perspectives that whole time. I remember even in 2020, we had a special issue dedicated to the war in Donbass. So we were already, before the full-scale invasion, we were really focusing on that. But of course, when the global attention is on this region, then we do see the uptick of audience coming to us.
Yes. So to understand this uptick in the audience and to understand your scale overall, can you give us a couple of numbers to understand the magazine better? So, for example, how big is your audience? How big is your team, and so on?
Well, we're actually quite small. We're organized as an NGO, so we're a nonprofit. We've always been a nonprofit. We are published by a Polish-based foundation, which is called the Jan Nowak-Jeziorski College of Eastern Europe. It's an NGO which this year is celebrating its 25 years. So it's also been around for quite a long time, since 2001. And it has been publishing New Eastern Europe since 2011. So we are really organized as an NGO publication. So it's not very large. We have 4 full-time editors on the team who basically do everything, which includes editing, but we also, of course, focus on other things: marketing, promotion strategies, product development, reaching out to audiences, and of course, other projects and partnership. And for us, it's very important to build partnerships, build relations with other organizations in the region, and also to help act as a bridge for the region. So it's really mission focused as well. But that means that we don't have a enormous budget. We're very modest, and it's very nonprofit. So it's organized as a civil society project, which I think has its, of course, pluses and minuses.
Yes, we can discuss them later in more detail, but you've mentioned, and we mentioned that the magazine is 15 years old, which is interesting and quite impressive for a news publication.
Thanks.
Why do you think the magazine has been so resilient? Basically, what did you do right to thrive and work for 15 years and counting?
So I think maybe this is part of one of the benefits of being an NGO publication, is because when things get tough, we don't give up, we don't shut down, we keep going. And even when it requires some sort of sacrifices, or trying or being financed from other projects, just so that we can continue the publication, I think that really helps in this aspect. So I think part of our resilience is that we are civil society and mission oriented, so we're really focused on our mission and don't want to give up on that. Then I think another very interesting case is the fact that we are a print magazine, and we launched in 2011, which was 15 years ago. And already back then, that was when everything print was closing down. A lot of publications were moving online. Books, ebooks were becoming very popular at that time. And so when we started, we had a lot of voices coming to us and saying, "You guys are crazy. Why are you printing when everything print is dead?" Yeah. And I think we proved that print is not exactly dead. And there are still a lot of people out there who prefer to have printed product in their hands when they read, especially longer form types of journalism, which is what we do. So when there's a long form, I think it makes more sense to have a kind of printed edition. And one of the best I think comments that we ever got was from Luke Harding. He's a journalist from The Guardian. He told us that he loves New Eastern Europe, and he loves that we print it because it's something he can take with him to the bathroom when he goes to the bathroom, to the toilet. So it's everyone has a reason for holding that print edition. But it's good. I think we showed also that the print is not dead, and there's still like a level of exclusivity around having a print edition.
That's a great segue to what I wanted to discuss for much of this conversation, which is your multi-product strategy, right? So you have multiple products. You have a print magazine, which we've just discussed. You have digital. You have newsletters. You have podcast. You have an app. First of all, can you give me an overview of what are your key products apart from the print magazine, and how do you think about the relationship between all of them?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to note that this has all evolved over the 15 years, and part of our strategy has been to kind of evolve with media, because it would be probably would not be the best strategy to just print the magazine for the last 15 years and do nothing else. We understand that media changes and the way people consume media has changed a lot in the last 15 years. So we have created different other products, different products, in order to engage audiences, but also reach different audiences. So the website was pretty much launched along with the print publication, but on the website we have articles which are a bit more related to current events, shorter articles, shorter and analytical or op-ed types of pieces, and regularly published, and they're always open source, so available for anybody to come. And that's also part of our mission, that providing this kind of nonprofit service. But then I think in the last 6 or 7 years, we also decided to launch the podcast, which is called Talk Eastern Europe. This was a tough decision because it required additional work without any additional financing. We had no grants or any funding to do it, but we thought it was very important to launch the podcast, and it has gone quite well, and has turned into a weekly product, and I can talk a bit more about that in a moment, because we have some exciting news about the podcast. But it has been very engaging, and we found that the audience has been also quite. They reacted quite positively towards it, and to help finance it, because I mentioned we don't have any additional financing. We launched a Patreon page just to support the podcast, and that has developed nicely as well. We can talk about that if you'd like. And then towards the end of 2024, we used to always have a newsletter, but the aim of the newsletter was just to promote articles and to promote the issue. So we relaunched the newsletter at the end of 2024 as a separate product of New Eastern Europe, and that was to kind of also create some sort of exclusive commentary and an analysis, and also provide kind of a news roundup, so people understood what was happening in the region from different sources, because we are not a breaking news organization. We don't do news. We do more insights, analyses, op-eds, and stories. So the kind of newsletter filled that gap quite a bit, and I think it's also done quite well. So we do have now these kind of 4 pillars to the brand New Eastern Europe: the magazine, the website, podcast, and the newsletter called Brief Eastern Europe. So that's how it kind of developed. It kind of looks maybe strange that they were, kind of step by step, but we do try to now bridge the audiences, because we do understand that there are different audiences for the different pillars. So if we kind of can find ways to cross promote to those audiences, that I think would be the most ideal way to approach it.
Interesting, and there are several interesting threads to unpack here. Let's start with the podcast. So as I understand, it's sort of its own brand. You've just mentioned that you launched a Patreon specifically for the podcast. Can you talk a bit more about this decision to have separate branding for the podcast? Was it a deliberate choice, or was it something you arrived at organically?
It was a little bit of both. I think the original reason why we kind of branded it a bit like separate, because we wanted to reach an audience that we haven't been able to reach before. So like kind of Talk Eastern Europe was its own thing, and I think we managed to do that. And then we've kind of reconnected it through New Eastern Europe audiences, because now podcasts are even more popular than they were like 6 or 7 years ago when we launched. And then the Patreon page, I think that it was a bit more for practical reasons, because like I mentioned earlier, we don't have a separate funding for it. And we were doing, in the beginning of the podcast, we were doing everything on our own. We were doing the editing, the recording, editing, publishing, and that's a lot of work. I learned a lot about sound editing during that time, but we decided, we wanted to become more professional, and there was a moment where we had a small grant from the National Endowment for Democracy in the U.S. to develop a bit more of our products, and we used that to invest in a sound editor. So we brought on a sound editor who's doing our podcast every week, and he's been really great, and he's really made us sound really professional. So if you listen to our podcast now, it sounds 1,000 times better than it did when we first launched it. And unfortunately, that grant, of course, ended when U.S. changed its priorities for funding in the region. But we have been able to supplement some of that with the Patreon supporters, and we have about 70 patrons right now who really enjoy the podcast so much so that they pay to support it. We hope to expand that number, but of course, we also offer some benefits, additional content, meetups with our patrons. So that way, it is a bit of its own brand because the patrons feel connected to it, and it's slightly separate. And I just want maybe it's a good time to just mention that we are moving in a big direction with the podcast, starting actually this week, the week of March 16th. We are relaunching as a YouTube channel, so it's going to be video as well as audio, and we're going to be publishing two episodes a week, which is going to be a lot of work for us, but we do see the need for it, and we do feel that this is a way to like take it to the next level, because we've hit a moment where we're like, how do we get to the next level with the podcast? We have a great audience, but it's not growing as it was in the past years. So I think this is a big step for us, and we'll see how it goes.
That's exciting. So congratulations on your video launch. I think that podcasts moving to video is a really big and important trend, and it's quite natural that you chose to go there. And basically, the podcast has its own niche audience, sort of, right? So there are people who follow specifically the podcast who might not be that involved with your other products. Do you do anything to do anything to drive them to your newsletter, to your magazine?
I mean, what we can do is just promote it during the podcast. So we will talk about when there's a new issue of New Eastern Europe. We will announce it, talk a little bit about what's in it to promote the issue. We will talk about, I often write commentary for the newsletter, so I will kind of highlight that on the podcast and then link to it, so that we hope that the audiences do find their way through it, and I think it does help. But there still is a bit of those who just prefer podcasts, and we cannot drag them over, but we do our best that we can.
Definitely. And let's go back to the print magazine. Obviously, print is not dead, and there is even sort of a revival of premium print products. But at the same time, it's still not the most dominant format for consuming information in 2026. So I'm curious to learn more about your thinking around printing a magazine. Are you keeping it at the scale you were before? Are you decreasing investment in the print magazine, or by contrast, increasing your investment in print magazine? And what are your overall thoughts and overall plans around the print magazine?
Sure. The print magazine itself, it's a challenge because the cost of printing it continues to go up. So it's really like when we grow the subscription base, it's basically in parallel with the cost of printing and shipping and all that. So there is a lot of costs involved with the print product. And that said, we also offer the same magazine to subscribers for a digital version. So it's not only print, you can also purchase just the digital edition. So we really look at the content that's in this product as like the premium, the exclusive content. We pay all of our authors for writing. So it is like, really try our best to like the top quality content is in that, and our readers pay for it. We want to keep it going. We don't want the print edition to end, the print, and we do have fairly good distribution. So we work with a distribution company, and I think we are available in about 35 different countries in terms of points of sales. So you can find us at airports and newsstands and train stations throughout Europe, and in some places in North America, Australia, and a few other countries. So we work with them, and we do quite well with the sales, so that it does keep the product going. It's difficult because I would like to invest more in expanding the print, but financing is always limited. So I think for the moment, I think we have a very strong strategy with the print edition. We look for ways to, now with all that's happening in the world with geopolitics, with security, with the whole region and world going crazy. I think is a nice way to say it. People are really interested in what's happening. So there's always going to be an audience, and I think what our aim is with distribution of the print edition is that if we can catch somebody, they buy it at a newsstand, they really like it, and then they come and purchase subscription from us, then that's a really great conversion. So we really are working on how to bring readers to the kind of, let's say, premium content, which is our print edition.
And what role does the print edition play in your internal processes? I mean, do you center your work around publishing the next print edition, or is it something that's sort of more on the side, and you also have other big priorities?
No, we treat the print edition as the top priority. This is kind of this is our most important one. So we usually plan out the issues well in advance. We work with trying to get big names to be in the issue, really kind of exclusive. So we put a lot of attention to it, and we have the whole team sits down and we go through it and make sure that it works well. And we also focus on the design. We have an artist who does our drawings for the covers. We don't do any AI. It's all by hand. Actually, he draws by hand, and then we scan them in and put them into the to the layout. So we really try to keep it a bit old school. I think a bit analog, and I think in this age where everything is digital and now things are becoming more AI, this will be even maybe more valued. That's my hope.
Nice. And to give our viewers, our listeners, a sense of the work you're doing, maybe you can share a few stories in the print magazine that you are most proud of recently. Like what are some big stories that you spent most time on recently?
Well, the current edition, which just came out, I think is a really great one to start the year off. I'm actually very proud of the cover. I didn't draw it, but our illustrator did. But I think it looks really great, and it also encapsulates what we publish in that issue. And what we often do with issues of the magazine is, well, what we not often but always do, is that every issue has a theme. So the first kind of section of the magazine is around that theme. And we really want, and I think we have been now in the last several years, is just really like connecting this region to the whole, like, what's happening in the world. So this issue's theme, for example, is Europe in the new disorder. So we are analyzing the new world order from Europe and Eastern Europe's perspective. And on the cover, we have a great reference to Greek mythology about Europa riding the bull. But in this one, the bull is somebody who's driving chaos. I'll let the listeners and viewers go look for it and find it themselves. I don't want to explain too much, but I think it's pretty self-evident. So I'm really happy with that issue. And then we had a really, really good one, which was at the end of 2024, right before the start of 2025, before the new administration came in. And this was kind of like talking about the age of uncertainty and how we're in uncertain times and how to deal with those kind of things. And we had a great cover with that for that one as well. And then I would have to say that the one issue that probably was really, I mean, I have several that I could refer to, but this one I think, which was really important, was the one which covered the full scale invasion. So after February 2022, we had our illustrator. I'm sure you can recall when President Zelensky went to Bucha, and there's a famous photo of him, very emotional. And like when that photo came out, our illustrator just drew it, but with a pencil, and like not thinking for anything, he just drew it. He's, it was like his reaction to it, and he brought it to us, and we said this has to be the cover because it encapsulates exactly that feeling and the emotions there. And then we gathered stories from Ukrainians, either from soldiers or people, refugees, or people who are working on the effort to support the defense of Ukraine, and we just put it together, stories of resistance, and with that cover, and it really was probably the highest selling issue that we published, and that was also very powerful for us to be a part of that and to help show what's happening to our audiences through our contributors.
It's really interesting. And we've discussed the print magazine, we've discussed your podcast, some of your other products. Do you have plans or at least dreams, aspirations for new products or formats? What do you plan to launch next, or what would you love to launch next?
Well, we have we're now focusing on the YouTube channel, so I think that's a big step for us. That's going to be that was one we've been talking about for the last probably 15 months. It takes a while to first convince yourself it's important, and then to convince your colleagues, and then after everyone's convinced, to make those steps and move in. So the YouTube channel, I think, is probably the next big product. I would say for the moment we are at capacity of what we can do. I would what we're going to be working on now is also expanding just our reach, finding new ways to reach audiences, to reach readers. And that also involves some innovative approaches that we haven't maybe looked at so much yet. And also working on, I think, we have discussed possibly doing some events around the issue and engagement. So it's maybe not products, but more like new approaches. Definitely audience engagement is something that we've been looking at a lot now, and how to get our audience more involved, because we know that our readers and our listeners very much feel like they're a part of a community. They're not just buying it, reading it, and throwing it away. We really try to have this interaction with them, and so how we can engage them even more, and make it a two-way communication channel. So it's not just us bringing the content to them, but also getting feedback and discussions. So we're looking at different ways for that. I think that that's probably what's on our horizon right now.
And to do all of that, you need some resources. So let's talk about money for a moment.
Sure.
How are you monetized, and what's your distribution between grants and non-grant revenue?
Yeah, so this is one that has evolved over the years. And what we're lucky is that we're able to sell the magazine, sell subscriptions, and raise money this way, so we can be independent. But we do not have, it's not in such a proportion that we can be self-sustainable. So we do rely a lot on grants, and we're very fortunate that we have a great relationship with the city of Gdańsk in Poland and the European Solidarity Center in Gdańsk, who have been our core supporters and funders since the beginning of New Eastern Europe. We have a great relationship, and we also work very well together on other projects. And they're very interested in the region of Eastern Europe, and promoting also kind of Polish leadership in the region. So that's kind of a bit of the genesis behind our partnership. So what we are focusing is to be able to move beyond grants. We have to look at other ways to monetize. That's part of the reason for the YouTube channel, is to see if it's possible to monetize and support the podcast even more on its own. But also we will be doing some fundraising campaigns for donations, and that's part of our engagement strategy. And then if we can increase the subscriptions and sales, so this is a way to hopefully monetize better. If you look at the proportions, it's around 25-30% of our budget is our own inputs, and then right now we rely on grants and support from other institutions to publish the magazine at the moment. But we hope to, aim would be 50-50. This would be a really good first step, and then we can move further. But we have a few steps to get there yet.
Yes. And as I understand, you are also developing your paid subscriptions, right? Can you talk a bit more about your approach here? Who are you targeting? Who is your typical paying subscriber? And what are you doing to promote paid subscriptions?
Yeah, so we had a traditional subscription model for most of the time that we existed as New Eastern Europe. But I think it was last year. At the end of last year, we decided to relaunch our subscription model as a membership model. So kind of this is part of our engagement strategy, that our readers are not just subscribers, they're actually members of our community, and that they feel that they have a kind of a more input into it, and more part of the community. And the membership system is a way to kind of bring that together. So we launched a membership system last year, and one of the categories we also created with that is a patron category. So if someone wants to just give us more money than the maximum amount for a year subscription, they can. If we look at who is our kind of average reader, it really varies because we have a large group of people who are students, because I think they do see it as a good resource for their academic studies. So we do target students and look at different programs that study Central and Eastern European issues. And then we also have think tanks, community, civil society, media, and then diplomats and other public sector people, experts, and things like this, who are a part of our readership. So it's quite broad. And then we also have actually a general reader. These are the people who often discover New Eastern Europe at the train station or at a bus station, and have some connection, let's say, to the region, and then decide that New Eastern Europe is kind of a way to keep that connection. And so that's, for us, it's very nice that we have like a really broad audience, and we try to engage them in different ways, and that's why when you pick up an issue of New Eastern Europe or you see what we publish online, it also reflects these different interests. So we'll have sometimes stories about the region, but then we have a text on security, or then we have a piece on an artist who's up and coming in a country. So it's that's I think it's a great way to reach a broad audience and to have a broad audience.
And finally, let's discuss some actionable advice for our listeners and viewers. You've had this interesting journey with New Eastern Europe. You've led it for a long time. What did you learn about media that you didn't know at the outset?
A lot. Quite a bit. It's really hard to say. I mean, I think if I could kind of condense it a little bit, I would say that media is always changing. The way people consume information is always changing. So one of the things we're also looking at, I haven't mentioned, is how to use social media as a platform for information, not just linking to our articles, because we know that people stay on the platforms. They often don't leave the platforms, or they want something short. So reels, a short reel with explanation is can be a way to reach the audience. So understanding that that the trends are constantly changing, and sometimes these trends are changing because there are powerful interests behind it. So tech companies have a say in how media landscape looks like, and we have to understand what their interests are, and maybe try to think ahead and try to get ahead of it, so that we can not fall behind and keep our portals and our information as sources for people. And then the other thing I think that's really important to understand is just how cluttered the information space is. I mean, this sounds obvious, but it really is. So you have to find a way to build an audience, build a niche that will be one that's that's kind of going to be accessible, one that the readers appreciate, and also kind of is a little bit different than what's already out there. So that's just setting up something and it's repeating what everybody else does. It just adds to the noise. So you gotta find a way to find your niche and be something unique. And I think this is what audiences really appreciate. And of course, I mean, from our perspective, we know we will never be able to compete with mass media, big, powerful media companies. So I think what we've learned is that building your audience as a community is a way to really focus on kind of this quality. Yeah, there are still groups of people out there who want quality information over quantity, and now with AI, it's so easy to just produce a lot of garbage. So if you can stand out producing quality information, finding stories, unique stories that nobody else is telling, I think this is a great way to build an audience.
And you're not only are doing media, you are also leading a team, right? You are an editor-in-chief of a magazine. What did you learn about media leadership and media management over this time?
Well, that every personally, I guess I would say that we to always be open to ideas, never to just come up with your thoughts and implement it this way. I've learned to be very uh, to be open to what people have to say, and to look for ideas in very unique places as well. So from the interns to the senior editors, everybody has a different perspective, and I think that's really uh, really useful to hear that. And, especially when you have a lot of young people working with you, they think about the world a bit differently than someone who's been around for a while. So it's really important, I think, to keep an open mind, and try to incorporate these perspectives when you're putting together a publication, because your audiences are also varied. So we don't want to just write for middle-aged white guys. We want to reach a really wide audience, so we should listen to also those who are around us.
You mentioned that media is always changing. For example, one trend is that we are moving from a sort of more of a written culture to an oral culture. Video is becoming bigger. It's notable that you are launching a YouTube channel now,
Yeah.
right? The Fix is also starting doing video podcasts, and this mode of information consumption are changing. And what I'm leading to is, if you were starting New Eastern Europe from scratch today in 2026, would you still launch a magazine, or would you consider starting from a different medium, starting from a podcast, a Substack, a YouTube channel, or would a print magazine still be a format to center around the whole outlet?
It's a great question. Uh, and I don't know how I don't know actually if I would start it this year, what it would look like. I would want to say that no, we would always have a print magazine, because that's the heart of it. That's the core. But I'm not sure actually. I think, if I were starting a publication today, probably Substack seems to be the place where a lot of people are starting, maybe with a podcast integrated into it, or maybe some YouTube content, video content integrated into it. But the approach then would be very different. So I think what we are lucky, or at New Eastern Europe, I can say, is that we started with this small idea to do a print publication, and we just evolved with the times. So it, we have all the different products already in place, piece by piece, as they became popular. So we haven't really had to make those decisions then. Yeah, I think it would be very difficult to start a print publication in today's times, for sure, for sure.
It's a good thing that you already have a successful print magazine.
Yes.
So yes, Adam, thank you for joining us today. I think it was really interesting, and people will be able to learn a lot from this conversation. And yes, thanks again.
Thanks so much. And yeah, for anybody who's out there and they're interested, just head over to our website at neweasterneurope.eu, or you can Google us and look for our podcast now on YouTube. So thanks so much, Anton, for
Yes,
the conversation.
check out New Eastern Europe and subscribe to their YouTube channel.
Please.
Thank you.